This will have nothing to do with the coronavirus epidemic. This has been titled In a Lonely Place. I was watching a discussion on television, and in the course of it, a lady held up a couple of books, both written, she said, by Dorothy B. Hughes. They're mysteries, she said, and she thought they were wonderful. I don't think she gets the recognition she deserves, she said, and the people talking with her heartily agreed. I had not heard of Dorothy B. Hughes. At another time, in a book of essays about crime writers, another lady had nothing but praise for a book by Dorothy B. Hughes, In a Lonely Place. I thought, okay, that's it. I better get a copy of it for myself. The protagonist of the book is a man named Dix Steele. The lady who admired the book had no problem with that. I think it's preposterous, but that's me. Mike Hammer is probably silly too. Let's just say Dix Steele is over the top as a name. Steele was a fighter pilot in the war, one of the very best. The war years were the first happy years he'd ever known, the narrator says, going on to refer to him in the second person. You didn't have to kowtow to the stinking rich. You were the mister. You were what you'd always wanted to be. Class. You could have any woman you wanted. The world was yours. In the years after the war, good fortune deserted him. He's being supported by a rich uncle who thinks he's taking a year off to write a novel. He later refers to that book as a detective story. There is no such book. He's subletting an apartment in Los Angeles from a rich alcoholic friend who has gone off to Rio, so he says. He's got another friend, an old war pal, who now works as a homicide detective. As the author notes on several occasions, small world, claustrophobic, even confining. He's upset, in particular, when he learns of the death of a young woman he'd loved during the war in England. She was murdered. He's informed of this by his friend, Brub, who tells him it's not surprising that he hadn't heard. And he said what was true. There'd been so much killing, one more wasn't news. The war had exacted a terrible price. All of them had lost family, dear as brothers, as their own selves. They had learned not to talk about death. They refused to think about death being death. Even in the heart's innermost core, where each dwelled alone, they did not admit death. The book mentions specifically two lonely places. The first is that heart's innermost core, and the other is a place where a murdered body might be found. And bodies are found because a strangler is killing young women. Small world. The other thing that bothers the protagonist is the unfairness of life. How others have plenty and he has nothing. He thinks he deserves so much more. He's sure that, somehow, he'll hit the big time. He's been hounded all his life by idiot fate. He'd had to smash it in the face ever to get anything good. He wasn't licked. He could still smash, walk over the broken pieces, come up bigger than ever. Bigger and smarter and tougher than anyone. He was going to get what he wanted. He was going to have money, and he knew where he was going to get it. Once he had his hands on the money, there'd be no second best for him. He'd be the top man wherever he wanted to go. No one would put him in second place again. Small, bitter world. He's often filled with anger, rage, and he compares himself spitefully to normal, decent people. And a reader begins to believe that this guy is a dark, menacing, sociopathic predator. There was a savage delight in being the lone wolf. It wasn't happiness. It was the reverse of the coin, as hate is the reverse of love. His sole enjoyment comes from what he calls the game, played with his detective friend and that man's snoopy wife, Sylvia. When he is dancing with her, he thinks he had no need of Sylvia, and yet there was need, the sensual need of pitting his mind against the mind of another. Until this moment, he had not realized his itch for the chase. He was breathing as a man could breathe. When he was lifted to the vastness of sky, when he knew himself to be a unit of power, complete in himself, powerful in himself, that vastness compared to the small world. His buddy calls him, approvingly, a real lady killer. And he is. He is a monster, created by a woman, the author. He is playing a game, and she is, too. She teases with tidbits of information to create suspicion and suspense, but not enough for certain evidence. All of the murders occur off the page, as if in a dream, a bad, bad dream. The reader is arbitrarily kept in the dark, the truth withheld, a way of cheating in the narrative. That could be explained by turning to the protagonist so damaged that he can't admit, even to himself, what a monster he is, the horrible things he's done. Yet he likes to read about the murders in the papers. Come on. And somehow Sylvia, Brub's wife, can see this, that something in this man is terribly wrong. In the end, they trick him into revealing himself, a ploy they have to resort to because there is no evidence. The book may be a great, deep, psychological thriller, but it was too much time spent in a dark, twisted alley for me.